Pizza with white sauce is a completely new thing to me, but it looked really good, so I wanted to give it a shot. After doing some research, I found two main ways of making white sauce for pizza. First one is based on bechamel sauce, and the other is based on French cream. Today, I will be using French cream as the base for my sauce, but more about that later. The dough I'm using today might be slightly different from the videos in the past, but the main principles are the same. Same bread flour with 13% protein, 600 grams of this. The hydration of this dough will be 66% and it will make 1 kilogram of dough total, which can be divided into 4 to 5 individual dough balls. Then in goes 10 grams of salt, 10 grams of sugar and 10 grams of dry yeast. The bag says 11, but some yeast is always stuck to the bag, so let's make it an even 10. I give the dry stuff a quick stir around so there will be no large clumps of salt or yeast. Next, it's time to add the water. This is 400 grams and it's quite warm so the yeast will get some kick and start the work. Some people seem to use cold water instead, but I'm not sure whether that would wake my yeast up. And as usual, I continue to mix things up with a spoon and then by hand or however you see best. If you have one of those fancy kitchen machines, you can definitely use one of those. I don't, and since this only takes like a minute or two, I don't see that as a valid investment just yet. After there is no dry flour left, it's time to place on a lid and let the dough sit and form for at least 30 minutes. When the dough is well rested, it's time to get some flour onto the table and to the dough, especially to the sides. I try to get the dough unstuck from the sides so it will fall off easier. Then I start folding the dough on top of itself, forming this round-ish big dough ball. When it feels like the dough will not stretch anymore, I press it down and divide it into 4 around equal size pieces. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is 1 kilogram of dough and you can divide it into 4 or 5 different dough balls, depending on how large pizzas you want to make. You can also use scale to weigh these, but I trust myself and it does not really matter that much to me whether they are slightly different in sizes. After forming each of these into pretty smooth dough balls, I want to try something brave. I will oil the container where I made the dough, oil the dough balls and put them to the fridge in this container. We will see tomorrow how good or bad this decision was. And here is the dough the next morning. One thing I had to do a couple of hours after putting this into the fridge, I gave the container a good shake to avoid the pizza dough from rising too much and coming out of the container. A good shake for 5 seconds pops some of the air bubbles, making it less likely for the dough to grow out of the container. I'm going to take the dough out of the container and to my surprise, the 4 dough balls were still individual, they were not formed back into one large piece of dough. I try to make each of these back into roundish shape and let them to get warm for 1 hour. Now is also a good time to set the oven to preheat to as hot as it can go. Mine goes for 300 degrees Celsius or around 570 degrees Fahrenheit, but just go as high as yours can go. You can get good results even if your oven did not reach such high temperatures. I have my baking steel on the middle, a stone would also work great or a baking sheet turned upside down. After 1 hour I prepare the white sauce for these pizzas. Here I have 200 grams of crème fraîche or French cream, whatever that's called. And I'm also going to add some pecorino cheese, parmesan would also work, and grating this was a lot of work, so when I got tired of grating, it was enough for me. Then in goes some pre-minced garlic and a good amount of black pepper. And remember to taste the sauce to see whether it could use some more of something, but this was good to go. Then it's finally time to shape and bake the pizzas. I'm going to peel and transfer the pizzas on top of a parchment paper just to make sure the pizza does not stick to the peel. The paper does not affect the browning of the bottom too much, the color will be fine as you will soon see. There are probably a million ways to shape a pizza and likely most of them are better than how I do this, so just do as you see best. But I start by pressing it down from the center outwards and at some point I let gravity do some final stretching. And if there is some holes in the pizzas, just press them shut. I add a couple of teaspoons of the sauce and spread it thinly. Followed by this pre-grated pizza cheese. I know people say, do not use pre-grated blah 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 blah, but I don't care. This is fine, it browns really well and it tastes amazing. You don't have to believe everything people say on the internet, some of them have no clue what they are talking about. On top of that, this is a perfect amount of cheese for one pizza, so I don't have to measure anything. It's 150 grams of cheese per pizza. It can sound quite a lot, but I think it's good. The first pizza goes in with just cheese on. Pizza doesn't necessarily need anything else, but I will add some toppings on the next 3 pizzas. I didn't take time on this, but when the cheese started to brown, I took it out. Every oven is different and the cheeses can also be different, so just keep an eye on the pizza and it will show you when it's done. This took maybe a couple of minutes or 5 minutes or something like that, not too long. I placed it on a cooling rack so the bottom can breathe. And as you can see, the bottom browned really well, even though there was the parchment paper in between the whole time. Then for the next pizza. First there was dough ball, and all of a sudden it's a pizza with white sauce waiting for additional toppings. First the cheese, and I'm going to add some slices of jalapenos. Same process as before, it goes in the oven, it comes out of the oven onto a cooling rack. For the next pizza, I'm going to put some mushrooms that I prepared when the oven was getting hot. Just some slices of mushrooms into a pan with olive oil, add some salt and pepper and toss around for a couple of minutes. It does not matter whether they are cooled or whether they are hot, straight from the pan to the pizza. Now the same treatment for this one goes in the oven, couple of minutes later it comes out. For the final pizza, I add some slices of fresh mozzarella. I would not recommend making too thick slices or they might not have enough time to melt. Here it is before the oven and here it is after the oven. Now that I am recording this after trying all of these, I can tell that the mushroom one was definitely one of my favorite, but all of them were really good. White sauce for pizzas is an excellent way to make them a little bit different if you don't always want to use tomato sauce. One way to get some extra crisp on the pizza bottom is to cut slices and throw them back into the oven for maybe 30 to 60 seconds while the steel is still hot. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, consider liking and subscribing to my channel. See you next time.